Hey everybody, this is Ben with Postfly. This month's Trout Box gives you the gear to tie the popular Chubby Chernobyl dry fly pattern, but with a seasonal twist. The color and size of our materials are geared toward the summer golden stonefly hatch, an exciting emergence of big bugs on a good number of western rivers. The size of these offerings make for explosive topwater eats and up the potential for bigger trout that can't resist the abundance of such large meals. If you don't have golden stones in your area, this is still a pattern worth having. This versatile dry can serve as a great hopper imitation throughout the summer and double as a killer bass and panfish fly for your local ponds. To get started, we're going to tie in our thread behind the hook eye and start laying a base down the shank. We'll bring this back to about where the hook starts to bend, or a little behind the hook point. With your thread base established, grab your yellow poly yarn. This will serve as the lighter colored abdomen on our stonefly. Tie in the end where you stopped your thread and make a few reps back towards the eye to lock it in place. There's no need to worry about aesthetics at this point, just make sure that yarn is secured well. Next, cut off the excess yarn and secure your tag with a few more wraps. The last thing we'll do with our yellow yarn is to cut it off square at about a hook gap in length. Now, take your golden brown dubbing. We'll be using this a good amount throughout this tie for the underside of the fly and to cover the rest of our work as we go forwards. Work this first clump in around your thread and begin wrapping to cover where we tied in our yellow poly yarn. Stop when you've reached the area around the hook point. Our 2mm foam is pre-cut to the correct width and will add plenty of buoyancy to our fly. You can experiment with length to best match the size of your local bugs, but you'll generally want it to lay just over the hook eye at the front and a few centimeters longer at the back. To shape our body, cut the corners off of your foam rectangle. I tend to round and taper the backside end of the foam for a more natural look, but at the very least you'll want it in the shape of a very long octagon. Even when sized correctly, foam is an awkward material to work with and has a tendency to really roll around the shank. Before tying it in, add a few drops of super glue or quick drying head cement at the attachment point. Make your attaching wraps about a hook eye in width to increase the amount of surface area being bound to the shank. This will also give us room to work with when we add in our legs and wings on the top of the foam. Again, there's no need to worry about aesthetics or the number of wraps being made here. We'll cover all of this with other materials shortly, so just make sure the foam is secured the best you can. Next, it's time to add our legs. Start with one strand of rubber legs from the bunch in your kit and hold its midpoint in your non-bobbin hand. Lay the midpoint against the side of where you've just tied in your foam and secure it with a few wraps. You can make any slight adjustments here before tightening it down. Then do the same with the second leg on the other side. We'll go back later and trim the legs to even them out and prevent them from fouling. Our white poly yarn will resemble our stonefly's wings when viewed from below, but they'll also serve as a great tool for us to see our fly drifting when on the water. Cut a 2-inch long segment from your strand and start pulling it slightly apart. It should still have the rope-like properties we'll need to tie it in, but it looks much better when it's slightly unraveled and wispy. Tie on your yarn at its center on top of our foam's attachment point. Then, fold the front-facing yarn back and make a few more wraps to secure it in place. Make sure this fold is covered well so both ends can't pop out of their back-facing position. With legs and yarn secure, we now just have to cover our work. Grab another clump of dubbing, work it into the thread, and make wraps over where we've just tied in our materials. When you're satisfied, return to wrapping just on the hook shank and continue up towards the eye. It's helpful to hold the foam up and back with one hand so it doesn't get in the way as you go. Continue adding more dubbing and working your way up the hook shank until you're about an eye length back from the hook eye. Here, we'll repeat the same process we did at the rear of the fly by securing the other end of our foam and adding more legs and white yarn. As we did before, add some glue to the foam's attachment point before securing it in place. Then it's business as usual, widely wrapping the foam in tightly, adding legs to each side, and putting in another folded back strand of yarn. Once completed, cover your wraps with more dubbing. Then lift the last section of foam and advance your thread to right behind the eye. Now it's time to whip finish. Take care to avoid getting wrapped up in the extended head and long legs of this fly. Shortening up the thread between your tool and finishing point makes this a much easier task. Do 3 or 4 turns before tightening down and clipping your thread, then add a drop of head cement to hold it all in place. With the tying portion complete, I just like to do a quick run through with my scissors to size everything correctly. First, I'm just cutting off some of the excess white poly yarn at an angle. Although the fish probably don't care, this makes it look a little neater and arguably easier to cast without the extra resistance, but in the end it's really more of a personal preference. The most important edit I make is clipping some of the legs back. This is done to prevent extra long legs from fouling the hook while casting and to ensure that the bug sits correctly on the water while drifting. Make sure you don't cut back too far though, as fish really love the legs. With those adjustments, your fly is good to go. Your post-fly box contains multiple hook sizes to best match the hatch in your area, so give it a shot tying it in a few different dimensions. This pattern is also repeatable for any big stonefly, ant, or grasshopper imitations and are sure to give you fun all summer long when the fish are looking up. Thanks for watching.